The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal. Great to be with you. Well, fellas, we're into August. We are into August.
It's official.
Let's hope we are talking a month from now about the ramp up. Can join us this morning, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Numbers to get in. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Mark Skurs, at Herbal Essence. You can email Chris at HailVarsity.com. Here's what's coming up in about 25 minutes. Our rewind, our sit down a week later with Steve Warren from the Warren Academy, standout Husker, former Packer. Of course, the showcase of all showcases last weekend, the Warren Academy showcase. So many top area talents on hand. We'll sit down with the big man himself, kind of get his take on things and just the world that Steve navigates, not only with his outreach and his community support with the Dream Foundation, but also what Steve's been doing and building with the Warren Academy. And Steve's one of our favorite people, Cranack. We had such a great time with him in Boulder, and things were okay before that fourth quarter, before that overtime. It was great to talk to Steve, and we've talked to Steve a lot over the years. So Steve Warren's coming up. Brandon Vogel in 1 hour. And then the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, will join us. Cranack, it's awesome to run you down. I was sweating on the way here.
I saw that on text this morning. It was great. It was, all I could do was laugh when I finally caught up with it. Okay. One, that you were late, and then two, I think a couple texts later, it was like, well, I'm on 33rd and 0 with an empty tank of gas.
Well,
this ought to be interesting.
Here's the thing. Like yesterday.
You hitchhike?
No, I got here, but it's funny with my Jeep. It'll just kind of blink at you that, hey, jackass, you're on empty. And yesterday we did the show from the patio. It was a patio Friday, so we just hooked up the equipment outdoors. It was 79, a little bit overcast, partly sunny, and just fantastic day to do radio outdoors. And Elijah was back here in studio, so we had a good couple hours, and I had all day and all evening to go fill up this morning, because as soon as we're done at 9, it's off to Omaha for juniors baseball, and I think he's pitching.
Okay.
I have not had a chance to talk his head coach out of that decision yet, but he thinks he's throwing. So so it's locked in, and I set the alarm. I made dinner for the family last night. Got a great deal on some super thick ribeyes. So we grilled and we watched a little baseball, and I went to bed at 8 o'clock, like 8:30. I crawled in. Going to be an early.
That's your problem. That's when you end up being late.
Well, I don't get it.
About you.
I don't get it. I need to buy the German Shepherd a new chew toy or something, because she has saved my ass more times than I can count, because I go comatose. So get up.
When you're responsible and you go to bed early, it doesn't work. Now, when you tie one on, you throw down 50 Manhattans the night before, then you're here like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Half-cocked.
Wanting the world to end, but yes. So, long and short, we are kicking off this morning. Do we get a decision this morning or this afternoon?
Right?
Do we get
prepared
something
for that decision? Like, let's step back for it. And the decision that you're talking about is the one coming from new Commissioner Warren, correct?
Right. Yes.
Out of the Big Ten, the new
he's already
commissioner.
Written a letter this week telling people to stand down, and there's evaluations going on.
Are we ready for that decision? Are we ready for that decision if that decision is, sorry, guys, take your balls and go home. We're not playing.
He won't listen. He he can't be the first league he might have been the first league to be smart enough to go to a 10-game conference schedule. He can't be the first league to cancel.
It's unlikely. It's unlikely that they're going to cancel starting today.
Right.
But the fact that that's even on the table,
it's still that dirty
a little
if.
concerning.
It's still that dirty if word, and I get it. But it was in this letter, just like it was in the earlier statement this summer about if we play ball this fall. And it got me thinking as I was staring at the gas gauge, like, I've just driven by about 14 gas stations on the way here, but I didn't get up in time enough to fill up and roll in. I think we're going to get some. All right, we're gonna get a game. We may get 3 games. Hopefully, it works itself out so you can play as many as you can play.
Right, and that's what's good. So I would be surprised if today, already on August 1st, he comes out and just says no season. I mean, that's just.
Do we get a schedule?
Unlikely.
Do we get a schedule today? Is the other? Do we get? I don't think so, man. I think
I wouldn't think so either, because I think all the deliberations right now are whether or not to go.
Right.
And probably putting in some, and what happens when you have a Michigan State situation like we just had. Seriously, like how does that happen? You have Michigan this week. You have Ohio State this week. Mm-hmm. They have an outbreak. They shut it down for 2 weeks. Then what do? You just don't play? And that's just okay?
No, I think they quarantine and they're trying to align a uniform setup where there's testing and protocols, because clearly not everybody's on the same page. And then from a political standpoint, there are governors that may shut their state down. All right. Mm-hmm. They may dial back. That could be Michigan. That could be New Jersey, based on what's going on there. You mentioned Ohio's outbreak going on. And then you also have differing thoughts. Bill Moose knows that there's probably not going to be a full Memorial Stadium. He has not gone as far as to say, no, we're not going to be at capacity.
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah.
But you've had Ohio State.
I've heard zero announcements anywhere of anybody saying any stadium is going to be full capacity. Right?
And if you've heard initial thoughts from the Michigans and Iowas and even Texases saying, well, we'll have a full stadium. I mean, that was weeks ago. And now, Ohio State's plan is to go 20%, and they're kind of the beacon of the conference, right? So if they're at 105,000 and they're going 20K, that's pretty much your standard. Go at 20% with your capacity. Mm-hmm. But you're trying to work things out, and if Indiana has just resumed their workouts, and that was more basketball related, but they have been able to hit play versus pause.
Yeah.
Now Michigan State and Rutgers, they're in the midst of a quarantine, and I don't know that you shut the whole thing down like they did. The quarantine versus the healthy that can practice and can't practice. I don't think it's fair to Nebraska to tell them to stand down or dial back, because they've done a pretty good job of handling their business with just the bubble they've created. Right. And the commitment the players have shown versus, a Rutgers where dudes are going to parties, several parties.
Well, and plus a lot of those folks are from New York and New Jersey. They're just in, bigger subways. Yeah. They're in situations where it's a little different than what it's like here in the Midwest. Did you see yesterday too, Wan'Dale Robinson put out a little preview of what the helmets are looking like? There is now a full face shield on the helmets. So sometimes you have the visor just over the eyes, but then the lower cage is still exposed. Well, that part now has plastic over it as well.
I'm looking at that right now, and this is a legit question with that.
How do you breathe?
Well,
does it fog up?
Yeah, I mean, the breathing part's going to suck, but they'll make it happen.
Of course, I'm sure that was considered.
But
then
fogging,
at that point,
the
you're
fogging
just sort of like,
part.
hold on, if that's breathable though, and it's plastic, what is it really doing?
I'm talking about the fog.
Well, yeah,
we put a mask on with shades,
like "Hi, Mom" on it.
Yeah,
you know?
we've all thrown the mask on and we've had our sunglasses on, and that thing fogs up in about 2 seconds. Especially those
like
of us that are asthmatic.
Back window when you're a kid and you just write, whatever on the windows.
There's artwork.
That'll be a new thing.
There's artwork.
Maybe that's what the players are going to do this year. Instead of like writing stuff on the eye black, they're going to write it on the little screen.
Totally, their area codes.
Yes.
Yeah. But of course they're going to do it backwards, and so it's just going to look terrible. It's going to right.
That's pretty.
It's like you're doing it for the wrong. You have to do it so the other people. That's going to be a mess. But that's one thing that's already happening, just physically, is that they're going to have these plastic shield mat. It doesn't look a ton different, to be honest. Like from a distance, you're not going to be able to tell. But up close, you would be. And then, what does that do? I guess to breathing or what? I don't know. I'm sure they thought of that. You're right. I don't think it's just going to be some plastic shield that suffocates the players. I would hope. Hey, we avoided COVID, but everybody suffocated and died. Like, I don't think that's the plan.
So if you could pick 3 games, say you get 3 in before it all goes to hell.
Okay. 3 Big Ten games?
Yes.
And so 3 Big Ten opponents is what
3
you're saying.
opponents. Who are you picking?
All right, we need one cupcake in there.
There is no such thing in the Big Ten, Krynak.
Oh, come on. You are hook, line, and sinker. Come on. You got it. Look, Rutgers, Maryland, the cupcakes.
No.
Right?
Yeah. You're looking at this as let's go 3-0 and crown a division championship.
No. I'm looking at it as you need your equivalent of your tune-up game. You need your equivalent of playing Pacific. Or something, right? And if you only can go big, I think you need to start off with one of the garbage teams, Rutgers or Maryland. Sorry to call them that. All the Rutgers and Maryland fans driving around Lincoln right now,
because there are so many.
Yeah. Right. So let's go with Rutgers. Right. They're already their roster's depleted because of COVID. They're Greg Schiano's cleaning house. They're a mess, I'm sure. So start with them just to get yourself right. Get some of the young guys some reps. Ben Art, right?
Right.
Bryce Bennert, get him some reps over at right tackle. Like, start with that, and then let's just go straight into. We need a middle of the road, which is pretty much the whole Big Ten.
Northwestern?
No, because that guarantees low scoring and boredom.
It also guarantees being able to finish a tight game.
I would go Purdue because points will happen. It'll at least be entertaining. Let's go Purdue. And then close it out with, let's close it out with Wisconsin.
Okay.
Let's see where you're at. What do you got?
My 3 are this, and I'm going kind of sort of with you. I want to keep the Purdue game as the kickoff because of how back and forth that has been for 2 years. Brom and Frost is very tasty.
And scores.
Yeah.
They're scoring in that matchup all the time.
And you have an offense with Rondale Moore and their other stud wideout. And Purdue just find a way, right, to make you miserable if you're a Nebraska fan, at least the last 2 years.
Can't call them don't anymore.
Right. No, you'll need the Boilermaker to get through the fourth quarter versus celebrate a win.
Right.
And give me Purdue to start. I want to see Minnesota and Fleck.
Oh, okay.
And then let's end it with Iowa.
Okay, fair. You notice that we are completely wussing away from Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. Like the 3 teams that are, the perennial powers in a 3-game slate. We're sitting here saying we want none of that because we want a chance to go 3-0.
Well,
is that what we're saying? Why are we avoiding that?
Because Krynak,
Let's get on the couch here.
I don't think they're ready.
We need to.
You don't think Nebraska's ready? You don't think Penn State and
No, I don't. Let me clarify.
That's right, Elijah.
I don't think Nebraska is ready. I mean,
No, Elijah's right. Ohio State is not ready for this.
clearly they're not.
No.
Clearly they're not. And if Nebraska gets to invoke their I formation option attack, like the one drive that was successful a year ago when game day was here, Ohio State's in trouble.
They didn't know what hit them.
In all seriousness, though, no. I mean, if you're going to play the Ohio States and the Penn States because they're on the schedule, God willing, you don't want them out of the gate. You need to build up to them. And I'm going to chalk this year up, and it's not planting the seeds of excuse. It's the way I really do look at this season. And I kind of go off of what Coach Tuioti was saying with some of the young guys that they're excited about.
Okay, he's the most positive coach on the entire roster in terms
he
like
is.
He talks like every single one of those guys. He doesn't say it like this, but you come away after listening to him thinking, there's a pretty good chance all 9 of those guys will be All-Americans by the time it's all said and done.
Hey,
I mean, seriously,
maybe.
he is that effusive.
No, I know, but my point is there are some dudes that have put the work in the weight room. They just need a chance to get comfortable on the field.
So is that the year? Is this the year it translates? Because okay, look, when they get here, they got here winter of 2017,
going into 2018. Yeah.
Yep.
Going into 2018. So you now have all of 2018, all of 2019, and then now 2020 in Zach Duvall's program. Now, within that, you have had a lot of attrition. So even though the staff has been here for 3 years, it's not like they've been working with a ton of players that have been here all 3 years, but a handful of them, enough. And then even the ones that they haven't, still a year or two as that thing has gotten established. And by all accounts, that's sort of what they're going to be defined by. I mean, Frost hangs his, I don't know, he hangs his success on that element of the program, more so than most programs. Everybody conditions, everybody's strength and condition, everybody does that, but it's emphasized to a different degree here. Is this the year that starts to actually show? The fact that these, because look, if you watch it on social media, you don't have to know a ton about weightlifting and powerlifting or whatever to know that those dudes are throwing around some serious weight. Like they're like, are you concerned? Do you think that there is a program out there that is outdoing Nebraska in that department?
No,
I don't.
Probably not between the lines of the weight room.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
when you talk about translation, though, it's going to come down to experience. I mean, there are some guys. Ben Stilley's played a lot of football. DeAndre Thomas has been in a lot of games. Ben's the only guy that's started and been on the line of scrimmage. Him and Damian Daniels.
He's damn near a 4-year starter coming into this year.
When it's 3rd and 4, and you got to get a stop and got to get off the field. All right? So you've got few of those guys to pick from. But how quickly do the guys that get a chance to start, in your linebacking core, Honus and Miller, they've seen and done a lot, and then your secondary's been there for 100 years. So yeah, I think you're going to see some of that translation, but it's all got to start with not getting pushed around on the line of scrimmage, Kranak. And I think Nebraska is going to be in better position with more bodies to stop that from happening on both lines of scrimmage. So I think you've got a better chance to see some translation this year. Now, you and I both know it's easy to be a spot guy where you come in and get 12 snaps or 10 snaps or whatever your role is. I mean, you're going to be asking a lot from a DeAndre Thomas too. All right, man, go win one of these spots and give us 50 snaps a game and just don't be a body, but go be a playmaker. That's the other thing. The guys that have been around the program a while, what's their jump look like from just being a body, and that's not disrespectful, but to being a guy that's a playmaker? Are you a caretaker, or are you a player, or are you a playmaker? Okay.
Well, Stilley's interesting
question
to me because you know that he's got an athletic base to him. You know, if you think about him coming out of high school, they would put him back they would drop him as a free safety. They would split him out as a tight end. So he has an athletic base.
Well, he's an outside linebacker too. His first time here at Nebraska. I mean, he was about a little bit leaner,
about 60 pounds lighter, but he's essentially a 4-year starter at this point coming into this year, right? Freshman year, they have him as an outside linebacker, and I want to say he led the team in sacks or was close to it.
3.5, yeah,
which wasn't a lot, but still, you know, not bad for a guy that's only a freshman. Then second year, he's trying to learn the new defense like everybody else and trying to put on pounds. Last year, I think I don't know. I'm not sure he was ever comfortable at that weight and or injuries, not sure. But this year, it'll be his third year in that same position, working with that strength and conditioning program 3 straight years. Like, he is one of the few guys that has seen it through and has been working with Duvall and Frost since they got here. So you would think someone like him would now very much benefit from that. A guy that's already got an athletic base and is now in year 3 of that strength and conditioning program, right? He's sort of the case in point of what you're after, of what the program wants to do, period. Develop guys over several years, guys that have athleticism, but maybe not the size or whatever, but they have the frame. That's Stilley, right? He's almost the poster child for what they're trying to do. So will that translate? And will that turn him into a guy that wreaks havoc? Or a guy that's just, you know, on the field and does his job? Who knows?
Well, what do you get too out of a Casey Rogers and Tate Wildeman? They've been in the program. They've dealt with some injuries. They understand what they're supposed to do. But what type of production do you get when they're called upon? Yeah. Because they'll be asked to give quite a few snaps. And then Keem Green, right? I mean, Keem needed to learn the playbook per Tuioti. He needed to get in better shape.
And Jordan Riley is another one.
I mean, that guy's just giant. My God, at 6'6", 335.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
then you got Damian Daniels. That's also that. I mean,
yeah.
You have a potential, if those guys are ready to play, I mean, they could sub guys in and out quite a bit.
What I'm looking at when I'm looking at the D-line is, yeah, the size is there this year, but who's going to be that pass rusher? That's something that the team's lacked for the past 2 years under Frost, is no one's been able to step up and be that pass rusher on 3rd and long. So where's it coming from this year? That's my question.
Well, I think you go back to Stilley, don't you? Based on some of his history.
DeAndre Thomas has a chance too.
Yeah, and then DeAndre's changed his body and changed his position, right? I mean, he's big, but he's leaned up. I mean, he redshirted in the midst of all of this to kind of commit to learning what he needed to learn. And with Damian Daniels, we've seen him play really good football.
Mm-hmm. He's capable.
No, he's totally capable. But how much does that zoom out? I mean, how much good football do you get of him?
Yeah, pass rush though, I'm not sure that, you know, I don't know. I don't.
Do you see?
I don't
see a Randy Gregory just on this roster yet. Do you?
No. I think you're going to get pressure from the linebacker position. You're going to have to get creative. I don't think you have, at least no one has proven that they are yet. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Maybe that person is there. But Nebraska does not have an elite pass rusher that we've seen.
Well, is that guy Nico Cooper? I mean,
who knows, right? I'm just saying that, but they don't have one that we've seen. Maybe that person exists. Maybe they'll emerge this year. But from what we absolutely know, 100%, there is not a. I wouldn't even say not even elite. I don't even think there's a great pass rusher.
Quick question: do you think we see more 4-man front? mean, you've got a bunch of bodies. You got a bunch of dudes. You've got a number of guys to choose from: Stille, Thomas, Rogers, Wilderman, Green, Ty Robinson, Riley. You can rotate a number of guys.
Maybe.
The reason I ask that is, I mean, it is what it is in Big Ten play when it comes to rushing yards per carry against your defense. Give me another number up front there to at least stop the bleeding.
Now, Chinander has said before too. He's not such a 3-4 stalwart that I don't even think he considers himself a 3-4 coach necessarily. He's like, we'll play whatever. We'll line up however we need to line up.
Well,
he's not like
your line's cross-trained to be able to play interior and on the edge.
Right.
So
I think they'll mix it up. Yeah. I think you'll see this year's so interesting just for kind of that reason. Is I just think you have now hardly any of these guys are proven options.
No, I know.
But you have a lot of options. A lot that aren't lacking. You're not sitting there saying, okay, we got to throw Rudy in.
Right.
Because we're just out of bodies. Like, that's not the case. You have multiple defensive tackles and defensive ends who fit the mold physically of what you're looking for. They tons of guys, lots of combinations. Damn near 10, right?
You got the bodies.
Yeah, they're all there. They're all there, and it's been a while since you could say that.
No, they've done a good job of building up some depth and options, and we'll see.
But there's always been those positions where you're like, okay, we're out of options, and so you're sort of
stuck with.
You have to play a walk-off, whatever.
Yeah. That's Mark Cranack, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, weekend edition of Hail Varsity Radio. More thoughts on that defense and the defensive line with one of the best at Nebraska. And he has done a great job with the Warren Academy. Our rewind is next. That's Steve Warren. And he'll recap the Warren Academy Showcase. That's on the way with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Now back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery with Chris Schmidt and Mark Cranack.
Back into it at Tower 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Let's get caught up with former Husker standout, guy who does so much in the community with the Dream Foundation and the Warren Academy. Steve Warren with this big old number 96. Steve, what's good, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. How about yourself? I can't complain. Just living the dream right now.
Well, good for you, man. And I wanted to get caught up with you after the showcase this past weekend. And I want to go back to your experience. You're a guy who got a scholarship to Nebraska. But as you were growing up, what was your own exposure like for college football programs? I mean, how were you able to get on Nebraska's radar, other teams' radar where you grew up?
Well, back then it was way different than these kids experience now. Like, we didn't have Snapchat or Twitter or Instagram to kind of post things instantly. Everything back then was VHS tapes. So we sent out our tapes. We went to camp. Coaches did a lot more foot traffic than they had to do today. They had to physically go see kids a lot more and sooner. It was a lot different experience. But it was one of those things that we always tell kids, if you're a good player, they'll find you.
Steve Warren is with us. How soon did you get on Nebraska's radar, and who are some other schools that were interested in you?
It was pretty soon. My first letter and my first kind of a recruitment experience, I was a sophomore in high school, and the University of Tennessee was the very first school that contacted me. And I was kind of shocked. I was sitting in class, and a letter comes, to my desk, and it's a big orange bright letter, and it's Tennessee, and I'm just a sophomore in high school at the time, so I don't have a clue what the hell is going on. And why they're contacting me. But then after that, it just kept rolling. It was school after school, and Nebraska jumped on pretty soon, not too far after that, my sophomore year, and started contacting me. And from there, it just kind of rolled. Of course, Missouri, being from Missouri, Illinois, all the Big 8, soon to be Big 12 teams for the most part, Oklahoma State. They all contacted me at some point and recruited me, and then, as far down as Alabama.
That's impressive. Did that letter sing Rocky Top, or was it just a big old orange 8x10?
Back then, Back then it was more of like a form letter, like you've been identified as one of the top kids in your class, and can you send us your height, weight, measurements, and everything was pen and paper too. That was the other thing, is it was pen and paper and fax machine. So that's how we communicated, or by regular house phone, which is way different than today. Nobody's got house phones anymore for the most part. So it was interesting. It's interesting to see in the last 20 plus years how things have changed.
Yeah, Steve Warren, what's a landline, right? So let's kind of zoom out now to what Warren Academy is and kind of your mission for it. And listen, you've always cared about people, and you've done that through mentoring. You've done that through Dream. You're doing that with kids when it comes to their training. And what did Saturday mean to you? And kind of take us through getting ready for it, because it had to be just incredibly stressful based on the pandemic we're facing. I mean, it's not a normal year, obviously.
No, not a normal year. The good thing for us is that with training and the academy having facilities already running and operating, and we were already having kids coming in and out, parents in and out, we had procedures in place to help them, to help protect ourselves. Masks were required by our coaches and anybody that was coming into the building. We had most of the stuff. We checked temperatures as they walked through the door. We went through the COVID checklist with every person that came through the door. So we already had those procedures in place just because we've already been doing it. It's something that we do every day right now. That part wasn't as stressful for us. It was really just making sure that we were doing what we were supposed to be doing.
Steve Warren's with us. Few minutes. Hail Varsity Radio, the Warren Academy Showcase this past weekend. Steve, you've trained a lot of kids that have gone on to their dream, and that's to play college football at different spots. And at what point did you notice that there is so much area talent? I mean, you've got some really high-profile kids in the metro region, in the surrounding Omaha area, and then the state of Nebraska, and even some surrounding states. But at what point during the Warren Academy or your involvement in training did you see this uptick, this explosion? Because it feels like, quite honestly, being from Nebraska, you had a lot of local high-level talent 20, 25 years ago. It feels like this is kind of a 2.0 of that, with so many really high-level kids in this area.
It is really taken off in the last few years with the amount of talent that is coming out of the area. Of course, you got the kids coming just across the river in Iowa there, and then Lincoln's always had a good pool of talent, and Omaha is just developing more and more talent. I think it's a testament to the high school coaches that they're really working on their craft with these kids and their position craft, and really paying attention to, what's kind of the trends going on around. And the game has changed, of course, right? So for a lot of the kids that were around here, it's fitting their skill set for the teams that are recruiting them. We've always had big kids in Nebraska, right? Like linemen, but the linemen and the tight ends have been really impressive to see. The skill position players, you always get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of those guys, but we have a ton of big kids. And we have a ton of big, strong, fast kids that are pretty athletic. So that's the part for me that's been exciting, is to see the big boys get some love.
Those big guys. I mean, it seems like you throw a dodgeball anywhere, and you're going to hit kids that are 6'5" and 2 bills and above, and they can run. Specifically, that tight end position. Why do you think there's so many high-level tight ends in the region?
The game, the game changed. Before, those kids would have been made to be like inline blocking tight ends, right? Or inline, or they would have made them tackles or guards. Now, because the game is so vertical with the passing game, those kids that are big and athletic now get a chance to display that skill set. Where before, a lot of those kids would have just played basketball, or they wouldn't have played football because they're like, well, if I play football, all I'm going to be doing is blocking. Now they have a chance to go out and show that athletic ability and run routes and jump over the top of people and catch balls, and it's more exciting for them now. The game changed from being more of a ground game to more of a passing game. So those kids have gotten more opportunities now because that's their skill set.
What type of changes and evolution have you seen on the lines of scrimmage, specifically, your forte, the defensive side. What type of tricks in your tool bag do you need to play D-line nowadays?
It's still the same. The defensive line for me is still the same stuff. You got to have great feet, you got to have good hands, and you got to be physical. That part's never going to change with defensive line and offensive line play. The best thing about it now is that these kids are more athletic because they're doing more training that's developing athleticism, right? It's just not about the weight room anymore. And as we kind of laugh as a staff, being guys that have played in the NFL, so many of these kids just get caught up. I need to lift a ton of weight and I need to be strong and the old Husker power stuff. But that's not football anymore. You've got to be able to move. And these kids now are figuring that out. We always used to say as a staff and as coaches, the weights don't fight back. You know what I mean? Those weights, you can move away. You can move 300 pounds in a weight room, but can you move a 300-pound man that's moving his feet and fighting back? And so kids are starting to figure that out. So we still got a long way to come in that area. Still people still put a whole lot in, just thinking they need to lift 600-700 pounds, and you don't. You need to be able to move, and you need to be flexible, and you need to be athletic. And with the academy, that's what we focus on, is making sure you're big, strong, and athletic, because that's the game. Once you get to the next level, it's about being athletic. It's not just about being strong. Strong is something that you've got to check off in the first box anyway. If you're not strong, you're not going to play. So that's not something that's a basic requirement. Now you got to go beyond the basic.
Steve Warren's with us, the Warren Academy, the Dream Foundation, Hail Varsity Radio. Past weekend, you had the Warren Academy Showcase. Steve, 142 kids and some high-profile recruits. Deshaun Woods, Carney, a kid from down south of Lincoln with Norris, and Thomas Fidone. And the whole world kind of knows about Thomas Fidone around this region, not only with his recruitment, but also just what he has been able to display with that size and athleticism. And what do you remember about Thomas when he first came to your camp?
Well, he started with us about a year and a half, 2 years ago, so a little over 2 years ago now. And the first thing I remember about him is how long and athletic he was. He didn't have the mass that he has now. He was just he looked more like a basketball player, to tell you the truth. He was just really long, but he had tremendous hands. He's always had those tremendous hands, but he's worked his tail off to get stronger. He's gotten quicker. He looks like a college athlete right now. But the one thing I remember about him is just his length and his ability to get to catch the ball almost in any radius. I don't know if I've ever seen him really drop a ball. He's got tremendous hands.
Well, the footage I saw, him, the way he comes out of his breaks and the way he's able to pinpoint the ball. And, yeah, I was not there Saturday, but just you're right with his hands, but you mix that hands with the athleticism. Is it fair to say you've seen a shift? I mean, a lot of the basketball kids that want to play football or those multiple sport guys thriving in football, is that, have you seen them be able to focus the different parts of their athleticism into football from different sports?
Yeah, I think we've seen that now as, kids that are multi-sport athletes, and we're a multi-sport athlete organization. We don't believe kids should specialize. So we're seeing that with the kids that we know. Most of the kids that we have play at least two sports, and that's good for them. They're able to cross train and to be able to get a different exposure to athleticism, and it translates to the football field. So we're definitely seeing that in our game.
Steve, a thought here, as you want to do this showcase. You've wanted to put a showcase on and bring kids together with coaches and get the exposure. 142 kids for this first showcase. How does it get bigger and how does it get better next season? What do you want to do as you move forward?
Well, it'll definitely be an annual event. We got great reviews from all the coaches that were able to be in attendance, and of course all the writers that were there. A lot of the parents that have been traveling around the different combines and showcases, a lot of them told us that this is the best one they've been to. So that was good to hear as our very first one. But we're football guys, so we understand the difference with us with a lot of other groups that try to do this is, we've got the background in everything from the speed and agility to the strength training to combine prep to coaching and position drills. We've got it all in-house. And that's what makes us a lot different than anybody else is that we don't have to specialize in one thing because we have somebody that does it all, and we've all been through it at a high level, and there's no other group that can say that. So we just took our expertise and we poured it into one day, something we've been wanting to do for a while, and the time was just perfect for us to do it, and the need was there more than anything else. So we just went and fulfilled that need.
Steve, when it comes to recruitment, you want the best for the kids, and if you're asked, I'm sure there's advice you can give on the other side of things. Who did you lean on during your recruitment process? That's how we started the interview. That's how I want to kind of end it. It's a different time, and there's eyes everywhere, which is a great thing for kids who want to go play ball. How are you able to sift through all of these offers and kind of land where you landed?
I was fortunate that I had an older brother that played college football at the Division II level, so he had been through it somewhat from recruiting and, talking to coaches and kind of what to do, what not to do. But, of course, my experience was a lot different than his at the level that we were getting recruited at. So there was a lot of it that I kind of just learned on the fly. But my older brother definitely helped me out. There weren't a lot of guys in my area at the time that had that experience, so it was definitely just talking to my coaches, talking to my parents, and then just paying attention to my gut. That's what we tell these kids now is, you'll know if something feels right if it doesn't feel right. If something feels off, it's off. If something feels good and it feels like that's the way it's supposed to be, then it's good. But also, don't fall in love with recruiting. These guys' job when they're recruiting you is their job is to make you fall in love with their school, right? But once you get there, that all changes. No matter where you go, it all changes because once you get to school, it now becomes your job and responsibility to become a player. And so all the nice gift-wrapped clothes and the pictures and the stuff that they do for you then, all that changes. All that changes. The recruiting part is a fairy tale. The real work comes afterwards, so don't fall in love with the fairy tale.
Do you talk to kids about social media at all with the recruitment process, just the fan base? I mean, fan base is passionate at a lot of spots, but that's something that is real, and kids can get caught up in it, can't they?
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in it. And, these kids have a very tough job these days because there's so much exposure and there's so many cameras and there's so many things going on and so much instant access to stuff, and sometimes that's dangerous. But for the most part, most of the kids that we deal with are pretty mature kids, and as mature as you can be at 16, 17 years old, of course, but they're pretty mature kids, and the ones that get it, get what you use social media for and what you do and what you do not do on social media.
Steve, best to you. Congrats on your success, and we'll do this again. Thanks for a few minutes.
Thanks for having me.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Thanks for hanging out. Hour 2, it's Weekend Edition. Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal is in. Good stuff from Steve Warren. Is his past weekend a success? The first ever Warren Academy. Good to hear from Coach Warren. We welcome in with HailVarsity.com and magazine, the managing editor and author with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion. Brandon Vogel is with us at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, how's your Saturday?
Oh, it's going pretty well. Watching my, let's say, 30th hour of Ultimate Frisbee since sort of quarantine/social distancing has started. So, pretty standard. Not a bad sport, actually.
Well, what channel's it on, and B, could you compete in Ultimate Frisbee?
No, not with these guys. It's on FS2 at the moment. So if you wanna sample that, it's just a pretty good game. It's like it's got some strong football elements. So I've enjoyed it.
Describe it a little bit. I've never even heard of this sport.
Yeah, so I don't know how many players there are per side, but they play on a big, basically soccer or football field. And the goal is to move the disc down the field. All goals, which are, you basically have end zones. You have to catch the disc in the end zone. All goals are worth 1 point. When you catch the disc, you've got like a couple of steps to slow down, but then you basically have to stop. And they defend you, so you've got a pivot foot. And I mean, just watching these guys so you've got like down the field route running. Some of the throws they make are pretty amazing. It's been a surprisingly fun sport to watch.
So how would the 2020 version of Nebraska football translate to the Frisbee field?
A lot of use at wide receiver still needs to get figured out. So not much different, I think, than they might on the actual football field. They would certainly have some. There's a lot of, I guess you'd call them jump discs. I don't know what it might be, but that's kind of a key part of the sport. So Omar Manning would probably be pretty good at that part.
No question about it. Brandon Vogel is with us as we break down Ultimate Frisbee because COVID. Here we are. So are we expecting Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, to make an announcement today, tomorrow, this weekend? And what do you think the contents of that announcement will be?
I would be surprised if it happened today. The Big Ten put out that letter basically saying, hey, hold tight. Decisions are coming in the next 5 days. I'd be a little bit surprised if they dropped that on the weekend. It seems like the time would have been yesterday, or we'll probably make it until at least Monday. It seems, as far as what that might be, I think there's a chance that, so the SEC and the Pac-12 basically came out and said they're planning to start in late September. I would now be surprised if the Big Ten didn't follow suit. To some degree, that seems to be kind of the prevailing opinion now, is later September is better. And with that probably comes, I would say, a delayed start to fall camp. Nebraska is scheduled to be able to start August 7th. You could maybe leave hey, you can start then if you want, provision in place. I don't know if you'd keep the kind of same time restrictions for how much teams are able to practice, but realistically, I don't think you want a team going through 7 weeks of fall camp. That gets a little bit monotonous and probably counterproductive at a certain point. So I would expect most teams to probably push back the start of fall camp a little bit if the Big Ten does, in fact, start in late September.
Vogues, you look at some of the other announcements, the Pac-12 and with what the SEC is doing. Do you think the Big Ten saw that and said, let's not be first, but let's not be early? And it's not a contest. I'm not saying that, but just from a reality of, look, students are going to return to campus here in 3 weeks, 3 weeks. So let's give us a little wiggle room based on what could happen from a numbers standpoint of COVID cases with kids coming back. And do you worry about that if you're a football coach with the student body coming back to campus after that first week of online learning only? The fact that kids will be in classes together where you could have, despite your best efforts, you could have infection numbers. Do you worry about your team going to class versus the online option?
I would worry less about class and more about just having more students around and more things happening on campus. I mean, as we've seen with some schools, college kids are going to be college kids. And it's even though I'm sure these messages have been stressed to the utmost degree, it's hard to tell them, like, hey, I know you want to like go out and do college things and have fun with your friends. Just don't right now. You bring more students on campus. I think that's probably the bigger thing than classes, though. Anytime you're getting together with more people than you would normally or absolutely have to at the moment, you're increasing your risk. I think the move to delay the start is really just a reflection of kind of the overall caseload nationwide. You know, the NCAA said it a couple of weeks, and they said, hey, when we stopped everything back in the spring, we thought we would be here at this point, and we're not anywhere close. Everything is way higher. So you kind of got to react to the second surge that we've had of this disease, and I think that's why we're looking at late September for most things now.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. So if it's a late September start, Chris and I were talking about this earlier. Late September start, let's go ahead and assume there will be some interruptions throughout the year. Let's say you're guaranteed 3 games. That's it. What are the 3 opponents you would like to see Nebraska take on, and for what reasons?
You complete the quadrangle of hate with Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
So you just do that, but then that could be an 0-3. That could make for a very dark, COVID-heavy winter.
It could, which is might be the case anyway. But I mean, those are the teams like Nebraska's got to beat right now. I mean, you know, Minnesota wouldn't be in there every year, and that's also based on proximity. But I mean, those are the teams. It's a really interesting challenge for Nebraska right now. So they're in the past 2 years, 1-5 against that group. We beat Minnesota in 2018, and then just got manhandled up there last year. I mean, it's kind of the challenge itself in a nutshell. And sure, you know, you could potentially schedule a win, although, you know, don't be too certain about that. But if you get Iowa or Rutgers, it might be a nice kind of tune-up, so to speak. But I mean, get Illinois or Rutgers, it could be a tune-up. But I mean, I think, and you could go all the way to the top and play in Ohio State or Penn State. But for Nebraska, it's kind of to stay focused. Like the next step for them is kind of consistently competing in the division, and to do that, you got to be able to play and beat those kind of teams. And it's something the Huskers are still trying to prove. So that's why they're my 3.
Now, Brandon, let's say you have to have a big dog against the East in one of those 3 teams, one of the Ohio States, Penn States. Which big dog are you taking?
Penn State's really good. It has the potential to be really good this year, I think, and they're kind of cresting in terms of an individual talent level. But I still think you want to take your swing at Ohio State, despite how some of those games have gone for Nebraska of late. And I'm talking about 4 or 5 years back. You kind of had you had the one in 2018 where it's like, okay, that spurred a lot of kind of what we saw last offseason. I think being able to play with an Ohio State team that was still really good. It wasn't quite the Ohio State that we've seen in past years before, or the Ohio State team that came to Lincoln last year. You know, there was so much buildup towards that game. But I still think if you're going to play a team that's top 10 caliber, you might as well play the best one. So Ohio State's the pick for me.
Brandon Vogel's with us. Few minutes, HailVarsity.com and magazines where you read Vogues, and follow him on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel. I kind of like that, Vogues. I mean, is that a potentially new Hail Varsity T-shirt, the Triangle of Hate? And you just have different different logos or sayings attributed to the Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota triangle?
That's definitely existing intellectual property, and I can't remember where I'm taking it from. It was one of the writers at SB Nation, that, the group that kind of went on to Banner Society, so Jason Kirk or somewhere along those lines. But So yeah, that's definitely not mine. We can't trademark that for Hail Varsity, unfortunately. Although, a couple of weeks ago back on the podcast, Derek and Jacob and I did talk through the kind of World Cup style scheduling approach to Big Ten, where you would just have 14 groups and you play each one twice. So maybe we can take credit for that.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Back to Ultimate Frisbee. I mean, what do you think is the most?
Really?
I'm just kidding. But I mean, we are going on month 5 with, limited to 0 sports at this point.
I watched baseball last night. There was some NBA on. We've got something.
I said limited to 0.
Okay.
Limited. Yes, it's coming back. But now NPR came out with a thing where they sort of evaluated the different league approaches to coming back during COVID and use medical experts to kind of evaluate that sort of thing. And essentially their conclusion was the NBA is doing it right. They're doing the best job of all the leagues by creating a bubble and not letting anybody in or out of the bubble. Major League Baseball, it was saying, is kind of doing the worst job just because everybody's traveling all the time and their testing is delayed, blah, blah, blah. And they equated what a lot of college football is going to do to Major League Baseball, right? So basically saying the current plan for most of the college football leagues, which is keep traveling and playing every week, basically, and have maybe inconsistent testing, is similar to major leagues. That's not good. Your reaction to that in any way, shape, or form, is there a method that college football and or the Big Ten could take to maybe score a better grade? Or is this the only way you can get games in, what's being proposed now?
Yeah, so not surprised the NBA was the best. I think basketball, so the NBA is taking this really seriously and came up with what I think, too, is a good plan. Now, I'm not a medical expert, but part of that is basketball lends itself to it. All you need is a court, 2 hoops, and a campus big enough to house, X number of teams, and all of those teams are only 15 players big. So that's a sizable advantage. With Major League Baseball, yes, they continue traveling, uptake in testing, but as we know, there's been some issues there. Really, it's the same Major League Baseball season. You just have no fans in the stands, and you're not playing similar series as last time. One thing that'll help football is it's not the day-to-day grind of baseball, I think. So even if the testing is, not kind of NBA level, but closer to Major League Baseball, you're not playing tomorrow, unless, of course, you're testing on Friday. So you've got a little bit of time. That'll help. But I think otherwise you're kind of just, you're limited by the sport itself. You can't build a bubble for 14 football teams. I mean, you can't really build a bubble for even 4 football teams if you were to go regional. And the whole thing's underpinned by, you can't do this in college because, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. These are student athletes. So that's the whole part of it. And while, yes, the ongoing pandemic, if we don't have college football, the ongoing pandemic will be the reason why. But the underlying reason, I think, in my opinion, why there was kind of no way around that is because for 60 years, the NCAA has kind of upheld this facade of amateurism. And at a certain point, you couldn't do things that maybe would have been on the table. There was certainly the same financial incentive to do because, hey, these are supposed to be college students. So finally, that part may come back. It was a good half century run there for the NCAA, but it might come back to bite them in this instance.
Bogues, you just nailed that. That's absolutely the correct layout of if we don't have it, it's going to be about control. I mean, safety and health, yeah. And I'm not scoffing at that, but when push comes to shove, you don't want to, the powers that be do not want to hand over any more control, power, or financing to those that are putting their product on the field. I mean, that's how I look at this. This is, if we're going to go the health and safety route, then let's just stop talking about playing ball and wait till there's a vaccine or numbers stop going crazy. Okay, but in all honesty, it's the economics of this thing that, to me, make the reason we're still talking about it a reality. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with talking about the fact that, you know, there's a lot of dominoes that will fall without a football season, and I don't want that to be a reality. And I'm also concerned about the kids that are actually going to be providing the spectacle, the entertainment, the kids that are wanting to go play ball. I mean, they love doing it. It's also at a crazy level of time commitment for them as well. So I don't have the perfect answer. I just want to see something kick off, whether it's September 5th or the end of September. And I just hope we get there. I want to get your thoughts real quick, too, Vogues, on some of Bill Moose's comments to the Journal-Star earlier this week, and then just the timing of the Big Ten with their response letter from Commissioner Warren, and also the co-signature of the head honcho at UNMC. Did you find that timing interesting?
I mean, I feel like, so we know the SEC was a little bit perturbed, I guess would be the gentle way to say it.
We can say pissed.
That the Big Ten kind of came out and made its conference-only declaration without really anybody knowing it. It was kind of like, hey, we're doing this because we think it's what's best for us, and I know you guys are going to be mad about it, but we don't care. So I did think maybe there's a little bit of gamesmanship of like, okay, well, we're going to announce the same thing basically you did. You forced our hand on the 10 conference games. So we're going to go ahead and announce our schedule, our pushback. I mean, they haven't released the team-by-team schedules, but so, you know, it felt like the Big Ten, and the ACC also came out this week. Pac-12 had their announcement yesterday. So it was a little bit of, I think the Big Ten had to do something. That part was it. Just kind of thinking about the little bit of a horse race here between these conferences because they are competitive. You know, Moose's statement, like, I understand the impetus to continue to hold out hope that you're going to get as many people in that stadium as possible, but it just seems like it's either saying the thing that people want to hear, or it's just kind of willfully, you know, being overly optimistic. It seems like. I mean, Ohio State at this point, like Ohio State brings in more money than any team in the Big Ten, maybe first, second, or third, you know, every year nationally in terms of the revenue that athletic program generates. They've already come out and said 20%. So it's kind of like, and I know Ohio's different than Nebraska. There are regional differences here that should be factored in, but to think that Memorial Stadium is going to be full, there doesn't seem to be any way to me that's. I mean, it's certainly possible, but is it responsible to do for the overall community? That's what the fan discussion is about. Is like, okay, we can put controls up and do the best we can with a select group of players, staff, support staff, et cetera. But people want to come and watch that, and what happens there, and what's the university's responsibility with that? And that's where things get pretty tough.
Any sense, Brandon, you know, Ohio State has their options listed out for season ticket holders where, you know, you can essentially, you can get in to try to buy to get into the stadium. You can kind of bank and hold, or you can donate. And there's different repercussions based on what you decide to do in terms of season ticket points and things like that. Assuming Nebraska does something similar, any sense for percentage of fans that would elect to just go ahead and donate and pay for things anyways? Or do you think a majority of fans will be like, nope, I'm going to not do that. Give me my full refund, please.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because, Nebraska really does enjoy unparalleled fan support. There are plenty of devout fan bases in the country, but when you just look at the willingness to show up for events, et cetera, there was a time early on where I thought, maybe you do that and you make it a kind of we're all in this together play. And for those who are still able to donate, I think it would be pretty high, but as it's kind of the economic numbers overall, the group of people who have been, seriously impacted by this to the point where that's probably not feasible is larger than it was when I was first thinking about this a couple of months ago. And just seeing some of the sentiment out there anytime we, post something about schedule or stadium capacity, et cetera, it's pretty divided. And there's the group of people who are also like, hey, love you, Nebraska. I'll be back next year. But if there's no games, I need my money back. And I understand that, that makes sense too. So I think you'd have a good chunk of people who'd be willing to donate if able, but maybe not quite as big as I initially thought. I initially thought it was a potential way for Nebraska to make up a good chunk of lost revenue, but now it might be a little bit more of a wash.
Vogues, what's coming up this weekend from you and Hail Varsity?
Yeah, so we continue to look for a Big Ten announcement. I don't know if that'll happen this weekend, but we're kind of getting ready for that for the weekend. We've got some theoretical schedule chatter going on. Pretty excited to see those Big Ten schedules whenever those get released. And had our weekly planning meeting yesterday, and like a lot of them, it's a lot of contingencies. But we'll see if Nebraska gets to start fall camp next week. So it feels like somehow we're in August already. It's a little bit hard to believe, and we're going to start talking more kind of traditional football as much as we can. So it's a little bit of a flexible plan, but I guess that's what we've got to be at this point.
Well, good stuff. Thanks for jumping on. Get back to your Frisbee, okay? And we'll dive into some more football next time. Appreciate you jumping on, man.
All right. Thanks a lot.
There he is. Brandon Vogel with us. HailVarsity.com and magazine managing editor and author Dream Like a Champion with John Cook. It's a fun chat with Vogues and the Triangle of Hate.
That's pretty good. I understand what
awesome.
He's saying there. My only concern is I just want to hedge against guaranteeing yourself. I'm not guaranteeing, but it's already going to be a long, dark winter anyways, right?
Here's the thing.
Do you really need it if you were to pick 3 games, do you really need to go
those 3?
God, you only got to play 3 games, lost all 3?
No, that's why I throw in give me Purdue, give me Iowa, give me Minnesota.
That's still a few.
To be able to gauge this season, I want to be able to test how we're doing against the teams that I want to be beating every single year. I don't want to go beat 3 cupcake teams, maybe 1. But
that's why you do the ladder approach. You do a bottom rung, a middle of the road, and a top dog, right? You do Rutgers, Purdue, Wisconsin.
That'd
and then
be
you got
sweet.
all 3.
You play Rutgers, and now you're infected, and you don't get to play anymore after 1.
Infected with what? Like crappy football or?
No, I'm talking, hey, we went to a Jersey Shore party, and guess what? I coughed on you on 3rd and 8 and shut her down.
And and knowing Noah Vedral, I'm sure that's what he'd be doing.
Noah's probably the only sane dude in Jersey right now that's just like, this stuff sucks. I'm staying in my dorm room. Knock, and I will look at you through the keyhole. That's it. Leave me alone.
He's pretty competitive.
I get that, but he's also wise, which means he's probably not, in a enclosed area, avoiding social distance.
I could see him trying to contract COVID to spread it to his opponents.
We're going to get sued, and that's not
I'm
true.
just kidding. I don't think he would do that. I really don't think he would do that.
No.
For the record.
Awful. For the record. Let's get to the Iron Horse. Gary Sharp's on the way with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. At Cascade Fountain, please visit LincolnParks.org/Cascade.
In Lincoln, we spell sports ESPN. 101.5 FM and 1480 AM.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kranak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out. Excellent strategy, sir.
Weekend edition rolls forward. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kranek, Elijah Herbal. Give us a find on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Mark Skurs, at Herbal Essence. It is Iron Horse time. Gary Sharp is with us. Sharpie, how much baseball have you consumed in the last week? Good to talk to you.
A lot of baseball with nervous excitement that it'll last another week and then another week and another week. I found myself watching a lot of basketball, though. I've enjoyed the last 2 days of the NBA coming back. It's kind of nice. We're into a somewhat normal routine where sports is on continuously. Let's just hope that this all continues and we go into this more uncharted territory. But it's nice to have baseball back.
Gary Sharp is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. What do you expect from the Big Ten over the next couple days, with Kevin Warren basically saying, hey, we know we made the announcement of going to 10 games, but we might not. But we might, but we could. Just hold on. And then he kind of makes everybody just wait, and everybody's in suspense at this point.
Yeah, we're in a holding pattern. If you would have asked me on Wednesday as the other conferences started to roll out their schedule, I would have said, boom, Big Ten, they'll probably have a delay, but we're ready to go. And then when you hear Bill Moose, the frustration in his voice, and that he's kind of cautious about what's going to happen with the Big Ten, and then you read through the letter that Kevin Warren sent out to the rest of the Big Ten, I don't know where the Big Ten is going. I think there's some concern with Rutgers and Michigan State, and it's not going to be, hey, if we can't have 2, the other 12 go. I think they're thinking all 14 have to go. I still think they'll release a schedule that'll be a 10-game conference schedule. It'll probably mimic what we saw with the Pac-12, start mid-September to late September. But at this point, I'm not really sure. I mean, we all know it would be nuclear to not have Big Ten football this year if everybody else is trying to make an attempt to play. But I don't think we can say with certainty that the Big Ten is going to play football. I think they have a strong group of science, health-related professionals that are giving them advice surrounding their schools and their protocols. And, there's some hesitation there. And I also think there's probably some schools, and it'll come down chancellors along with the science that'll make the call, that are probably saying, hey, this isn't the right thing to do. So I think Kevin Warren's balancing a lot of stuff as a brand-new commissioner. But I'm not super optimistic, guys, and I think that's a frustrating thing in Nebraska because they just want some answers. They want to move forward. They want to know that less than a week now, they can start camp for a season that they still don't know who they're playing on opening weekend.
So the next question is this. If the Big Ten says we're going to be the one Power 5 league that shuts down in the name of health and safety, fine, will that prohibit an Ohio State, a Nebraska, a Michigan, Iowa? Can you go put your own 10 games together? It's not a new question, but it might be time to ask it again, because if you're shut off by the league, fine, but what about your own house, i.e. your own state, your own economy? And if your own local health experts say, let's give it a shot, fine, you've got the medical blessing, and it'd be a little weird because you've got UNMC teamed up with the Big Ten, but could Nebraska go do their own thing regionally?
I mean, I think they probably could, but there goes probably a relationship with the Big Ten.
Yeah.
If you're looking at money. I mean, the Ohio States, the Michigans, and the Nebraskas, they want to play football. I still think there's going to be a schedule that'll be released by the Big Ten. I just think it's not as solid as maybe we thought a couple of days ago. Sure. I also think, next week's a huge week for football, whether it be in this state with what Omaha Public Schools decides for athletics. The NSAA may elect to push back the start of the season. And then you have the Board of Governors that are going to meet on Tuesday. Now, they will not make a decision on football at the FBS level, but they could bang all of the fall championships, which then schools and conferences have to make a decision if they're going to move forward with fall sports, like the Big Ten. If they say no championship for volleyball, does the Big Ten go forward with a conference schedule and then they just play a conference tournament to have a speak champion? Or does the Board of Governors canceling everything make schools go, no, we can't have football? That's a bad optic. I don't think if the decision is to cancel championships in the fall, I don't think that immediately means a death knell for football being played this fall. But I think with people that are in the bow ties and the suits that are making decisions, they're going to rely on the optics. It's just I had some optimism as schedules were being released, and then the whole stuff with the Big Ten hit me, and I'm like, man, I don't know where we're going, but we've kind of been in this situation now for 20-plus weeks.
Is there any scenario, Gary, in which the Big Ten will not play while the SEC and ACC will? Would the Big Ten do that?
That's a great question. I don't think so. I mean, the SEC has, people said, well, they're a follower. You would think they would make the lead on this, and look what the ACC did. I think the SEC did the smart thing. They said, we're going to wait until the 26th of September because look at the place where we're at in our footprint. That's some of the worst states. We got to get those down. So that gives us a little bit more time. I just can't see the Big Ten sitting on the sidelines. Well, they watch the other four power conferences play. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I think right now with the Big Ten trying to make a decision, because the Big 12 will make a decision on Monday, is they need some leadership. I mean, through all of this, we say, hey, we got to get some leadership. I think the Big Ten, like if you're looking at it from Nebraska's standpoint, they want some leadership. They want some answers. They just want some direction. They want to know that the season is starting on this date and who they're going to play so that they can relay answers to the players that are asking, because you've got to know that there are players on Big Ten campuses that are wondering, is it worth it? Do I say, nope, I'm just going to redshirt this year, or I'm not going to play this year, and I'm just going to sit out and get ready for the draft? Coaches want something that they can deliver to their players to give them an answer, because players want to play. Coaches want to coach. They just need some direction. And right now, the Big Ten, which went first to say we're having a conference-only schedule, I mean, they're the wild card. You think they would have had the schedule out first to be a leader in that. Instead, it just seems like they're waiting for somebody else to make the decision for them.
Gary Sharps with us, Hail Varsity Radio Weekend Edition. You just nailed that you were the first to kind of start the trend of conference only, but you're now going to be the last to have a schedule put together. That seems odd, but I guess, I mean, the Big Ten's not going to make a decision until they have to, right? And they're just going to take a look, and I hope we do get football. And Sharpie, the shift of optimism, you're right, man. I mean, we're talking about all these schedules coming out Wednesday and into Thursday, and all right, Big Ten, your turn. Is Nebraska kicking off with Purdue still, or is it Iowa, and we're still waiting. I want a thought from you. If you could pick, say we start, but we only end up getting 3 games. This has kind of been our ongoing question of the day. What 3 teams are you drafting for Nebraska to play?
Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Okay.
It's the same thing as Brandon Vogel. Did you guys talk before this? Or?
No, I was in the green room wearing the soundproof headphones.
So what about, so you're taking the approach of let's just play, the 3 games that sort of mean the most to Nebraska overall and in terms of their standing, as opposed to the latter approach where I was saying you start with the Rutgers, You advance to a Purdue, middle of the road. You close with the Wisconsin for the measuring stick.
I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I think if I'm looking at this season, and first of all, I love what the ACC did with no divisions.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the Big Ten do that, no divisions. I mean, it's 1 year. Just do something quirky. But you got to remember that TV has a little bit of say in this, and TV wants some sexy matchups. I mean, look at the SEC. The SEC is insane to play 10 conference games. It's going to be brutal. They're going to beat the heck out of each other. But TV got their wish to have that conference play 10 conference games only. So why not mix it up in the Big Ten? But if you're only going to get 3, man, I think from a fan standpoint, those are the 3 that I want to watch to say, let's play the 3 closest teams, let's play the 3 so-called rivals, let's play the 3 teams that are above you in the division, and let's see where you are. Guys, it wouldn't surprise me. I think the Big Ten, with a schedule, I think they will scrap the original schedule.
Okay.
And they will start over, which means, wouldn't that be something? And if it's 5 weeks from today or, 8 weeks from today, Nebraska and Iowa to kick off the season in Iowa City.
That'd be sweet. That'd be fun. And it'd be good weather.
Yeah, it would get your attention.
Yeah, I mean, because there's speculation on the other side of the division that the Ohio State-Michigan game is going to either be the opener or within that first 3 weeks of a schedule. I mean, how about that? That gets a little intrigue going. That gets you a little fired up for some Big Ten football conference only, right?
Oh, it is. Sharpie, I want to switch gears and kind of get your read on high school ball, specifically in Omaha, with you have different school districts in the region, and what's your feel right now with OPS and athletics?
Well, first of all, I want everybody to know that's listening out there that I am trying to become the male version of Blindside. I live in a good school district in Omaha. I have running water. I have a Roomba. I have a nice kitchen. I have a couch. I have good internet. I got a pool. I got a weight room, all of that stuff. So if anybody would like to send me their top-level high school prospect that has to be a Power 5 prospect, either male or female, I've got a place for you. Now, I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but that's happening. We see what's happening in Iowa. I think the NSAA is going to discuss that on Monday. In regards to what they do in this town, I think LPS is kind of watching OPS, but I get the feel that LPS they want to play sports. Mm-hmm. And usually it's the other way around, where OPS is the leader in sports and LPS is like a little bit, they're not as quick, and then LPS schools have trouble competing with OPS schools. I think OPS on either Monday or Tuesday is a complete wild card, guys. They could say, we are only going to participate in athletics if the season is pushed back, or we're only going to do it with our schools. I mean, I at this point, I don't know what OPS is exactly going to do, but I get a sense that they're not going to do what everybody else wants to do, which may trigger the NSAA to look at football. Now, we're just talking about football, to possibly push football back in Class A a couple of weeks. But it's a big either Monday or Tuesday when they make the announcement here in this town, because it affects some really good OPS programs, but there's some prospects that may not play this year. And if they don't play and OPS decides not to play football, I mean, those kids have a chance to transfer. What does that do? It'd be outside of the bylaws of the NSAA. So watch that. That's why I say next week is such an important week for football, in-state, out-of-state, on where we are moving forward, and hopefully a good week for this country and trying to battle something that, let's be honest, political or not, none of us thought we'd be sitting in this seat on August 1 still talking about the season being up in the air. We thought we'd have a handle on it. We'd feel a little bit more confident that with our schools and our campuses reopening, that 5 weeks from today, we'd be having a football season. No one can guarantee that 5 weeks from today, you're going to be watching a game from Memorial Stadium.
Gary Sharp is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. God, it's so interesting with the youth sports. Wouldn't there be enough out there now? Because, look, baseball's in full swing. I mean, if you're not paying attention to that, like maybe if you're out driving around, maybe you're not in the baseball or softball world, but that stuff is happening as though there's no pandemic. And Chris, I don't know about you, but there are precautions in place.
It's been great.
Right?
We've been to Omaha 100 times. We've had games in Lincoln. But
no one follows those precautions, right? Like
it's been fine.
It's just baseball. You got kids in the dugout playing. Right? You have fans in the stands. Maybe a couple of them are roped off or something.
It is. I mean,
concessions.
The way it's
not
the way it's been handled. I'll say this, guys. Let me just jump in on the youth side of things. It's been great. I mean, no one's come down with it that I know of. I mean,
that's what I'm saying
with our team. And there's been sanitizer. The kids are spaced out. Parents are congregating in their chairs, or if there are bleachers, we're spaced out there. It's been fine. It's been okay.
I'm just saying, it's only to the trained eye does this look way different than a non-COVID baseball season. And I'm just wondering, based off of that, is there anybody monitoring that? Are any of the officials looking at being like, okay, what is happening when we get all these teams together with regularity and parents together with regularity?
So let me answer that question, because that's a question that I've asked. They have watched closely how the Shrine Bowl went. Mm-hmm. They've watched closely how some 7-on-7 have gone. Especially have watched closely of Legion Baseball, which is not under the umbrella of NSAA. And Legion Baseball, for the most part, has gone really well. You've had a couple of teams that have had to be sidelined, some players that have had to step away. But coaches and players have had a responsibility, and they were able to pull it off as Legion Baseball has now come to an end. I think the biggest thing is you're looking at numbers and cases, and you're hearing rates got to be down, and the whole debate about schools being opening, that they're like, well, why are we talking about sports right now? And there is no coach that I've talked to that said we can't do this, that we will find a way to do it and do it responsibly, because that's what we do. That's what we want to do, and we will do our part to make it happen. I just think that the athletic side here in this city, their voice, which is loud, I think that their voice doesn't get all the way to the top. And that's why I think there's kind of a stiff arm of, well, maybe we shouldn't have athletics here in Omaha. Maybe OPS should take the fall off, because we got to worry about getting our schools open and keeping our kids safe in school before we ever worry about them going through with athletics. But you're absolutely right, Mark. Youth sports and high school sports, they've been able to pull it off, and they've been able to do it. And there's going to be hiccups. We're in the middle of a pandemic trying to get back to the little bit of normalcy that is with sports. I think the good school districts, the good athletic directors, the good principals, superintendents, they've all shared information on how this is going to work. And I guarantee you that athletic directors and coaches have shared information with the baseball side and other sports that have been going on, that they can pull this off. Now, why OPS got a little bit concerned is because basketball, which is, big in this town, grassroots AAU basketball, there have been a lot of cases of kids that have had to step aside because they have tested positive, or teams that have had to pull out a tournament, where I think kind of put up the red flag of OPS. I wish I had an answer for you on what OPS is going to do, but I'm not super confident that they're going to say move forward, which may be the trickle effect of Class A football being moved back.
Gary Sharp with us. Sharpie, thanks for the info, man. Appreciate you jumping on and sobering discussion points, but we had to have them, and thanks again for your input, man.
Well, I'm hoping, I'm hoping we'll have some good news this upcoming week. We need good news when it comes to, first of all, the country. We need good news when it comes to sports, because there's a lot of people that are waiting for answers. I scrolled through the pictures of Kansas and Oklahoma working out yesterday, and that was football porn to me, thinking, look at the helmets. They look different. They have the face shield. Boy, this can work. I hope it can work. There's enough people that want to make it work. It's not going to be easy at all. We know that. The biggest problem with college football is that it's college, but it's worth trying to pull it off. And hopefully we have a good week. We have some leadership. We get some answers, and we can move forward, and we get back to arguing about sports and most importantly, breaking down Nebraska's 10-game schedule.
That's about right. Sharpie, we'll talk again soon, buddy. Thanks again.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Gary.
It's Gary Sharp.
Oh, imagine that. Think about that. Look, the schedule is always one of those things that you can look ahead to for years. Be like, oh, that 2027 schedule, look out. But this is a case where it's just going to land on your lap.
Yeah.
Like a Little League. Like Little League. Be like, wait, who do we play? When? What? I mean, it's going to come out, and that'll be fascinating to see how they stack that.
Cranack, we'll hope to bump into you this weekend as we're headed up to Omaha, the Lincoln A's. And thanks for this morning, man. It was good to chat.
Yes, sir. Let's be in touch.
All right. Elijah, good stuff. We'll be back at you Monday at 4 with Hail Varsity. Have a great weekend. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
You've got your very own handyman to help remodel your home.
Some bathrooms look like a pink nightmare.
And another one that looked like a barn stall.
This is Erica from Handyman. Our August vanity and faucet sale is on.
Hey, I'm Joe. There really are some ugly bathrooms out there. Thanks to everyone who entered our ugly bathroom contest.
If one of them is yours, or maybe yours is a little tired looking, come to Handyman.
We'll help you do it yourself, or we'll introduce you to our approved list of plumbers and contractors.
For a complete, no more ugly makeover.
Our vanity and faucet sale is going on right now through the end of August.
It's so easy to pick one out. They're right on the sales floor. Bring your tape measure, your imagination, and say goodbye to your ugly bathroom.